Hello attendees, a warm welcome to all and thank you for joining us on this session today, whereby we'll be talking around digital signatures in the education sector. And we'll start off with a quick introduction. We'll jump into what a digital signature actually is, what the benefits are, some specific use cases around education, and then some of those solutions that can help solve these challenges and some promotions that can help make it more cost effective. I'll then hand over to my colleague Matt, who will provide a demonstration in Teams before we have time to summarise as well. So in terms of introductions, my name is David Grant. I'm the Software Solutions Manager. I'm joined by Matt Geary, who's our Acrobat Sign Business Development Manager. And academia have been very aligned with Adobe for many years, and we're doing this in partnership with Adobe today. Part of the value we feel we bring to the education sector is our coverage and certainly probably through our framework presence, whereby we are able to obtain some quite unique insights and trends into the sector. A lot of this is through the frameworks, as I mentioned, whereby lots of our customers, particularly in FE and HE, utilise the framework agreements for non-standard solutions that would normally come through partners like us. So we see lots of activity around HR systems, finance, all sorts of bespoke ones, as well as your standard sort of desktop and infrastructure solutions. So the reason that that's applicable is we've seen loads of changes over the last 2 years, particularly with COVID, with teaching and learning, and other trends and changes that have been more apparent over a longer period as well. And in many scenarios, you can sort of put these all under the umbrella of digital transformation, which means lots of different things to different people. But again, the reason I allude to that here is we're talking about digital signatures today, and when we think about what a digital transformation can be, these can be very complex, very time-consuming, very expensive projects with unknown outcomes often. And again, we need to move down there. We need to make sure that we have legacy systems speaking to new systems and we gain those efficiencies. But bringing that back to digital signatures, I feel it's a really good example of a digital transformation. It's probably a really easy one to visualize, where you're no longer using a manual pen, physically carrying paper, and you're moving to digital workflows. So a great example, and also I feel probably one of the quickest wins in this world of migrating. As I mentioned, there are many IT transformational projects that are time consuming, that are very expensive. And again, I mentioned earlier, we are delivering this today in partnership with Adobe, who offer a really good enterprise solution that's really well suited for education. And it is, well, was called Adobe Sign. It's recently been changed names to Acrobat Sign. So again, they'll be interchangeable terms for the purpose of today. So what is a digital signature? I thought this would be a helpful slide to start off with, just to try and sort of break it down, because we often hear customers saying, you know, is it even legal for me to use these? And absolutely it is. So what I've applied here is kind of like the four sort of, or the framework, if you like, of digital signatures or e-signatures all the way through to digital signatures. On the far right, you have the sort of all singing, all dancing. And again, the second, third and fourth boxes are generally all acceptable by UK organisations, certainly by EU countries and the majority of the world. So when we look at this framework, I did also want to call out that this red logo represents Adobe Acrobat, which many of you will know, many of you will have access to. And Acrobat within itself contains some basic digital signature functionality. I'll provide some more granular details and comparisons between the two later. But again, we feel that, you know, Acrobat, whilst may not provide the legal requirements you may need when we're looking at digital signatures, but could be a really important part of an approvals process and part of a bigger transformation, and something just worth bearing in mind. So the biggest difference really with an e-signature versus a digital signature is this concept of a digital certificate, some digital footprint that proves the document hasn't been tampered with, its end-to-end encryption, the ability to authenticate users, so on and so forth. And again, all of this is absolutely viable in Acrobat Sign. Okay, so I wanted to show you an example, and again, Matt's going to show a sort of demo of the product, but just to sort of talk through this. And I've tried to really simplify things and imagine this in your own working world and within your own teams or areas of the business you're familiar with. And in this example, I'm looking at a new hire. So there's a department head who needs to fill a post, they need to hire somebody for that, and they may need a single person to approve. Again, I'm sure for many of you, there may be more than one approver, and there may be many more steps involved. But I've tried to simplify this just to reiterate some of the pains in common processes. So a department head may have to get approval in the first instance to actually hire a new head. And again, they may have to write up a document, maybe in Word, maybe in PDF. They'll probably have to print that document, and they'll probably have to get that approved. So they may have to scan it back in and email that over to let's say HR director in this example for approval. They might have to physically walk over and get that approved. That does get approved, it comes back to them, great. They then start looking for jobs or for new candidates, and they interview multiple people, and they find this yellow circle who they feel is the right person for them and the person they want to make an offer to. Again, now we need to build a contract. We need to make a letter of an offer letter to this end user. So again, more paper may need to be printed. How are we communicating that paper to that person? Are we sending it in the post? Are we printing it out and physically giving it to them? Are we emailing it to them? In all of the above, how is this user going to actually sign that off? Do they need to sign a physical document that's been sent through that could have been delayed, that doesn't necessarily even prove it's them, and send that back? Do they need to print out the email that's been sent to them and then sign that and scan it back in and email back to you? They don't have a scanner for that. So when we start looking at all these points, you know, the concept of not just the paper printing at this point, but how long these are taking, the lack of consistency, and almost to some extent the expectations we're having on end users in terms of the IT they have to complete these. So the time all of this is taking is significant. I briefly touched on this, but again, compliance. Where's the audit trail that shows me for everything from the initial approval and request all the way through to the offer letter and the acceptance of that as well? How easy is it for me to pull that off? What is the end user experience like? And when I say end user, absolutely the new hire, but also the department head. What about the HR director? All of these guys have full-time jobs. Everybody needs to get on with day-to-day life. So challenge, and again, like I said, this is a really simplified one. When you start adding additional stakeholders, then the many of these challenges become even harder. The audit trail, the time it's taken, the amount of paper, end user experience, so on and so forth. So when we talk about digital transformations, we want to get rid of all of those manual elements. We're going to throw them all away, get rid of them all, and we want to insert these sorts of digital cogs in there instead. And again, this is just the really nice cloud solution that allows you to streamline all of the communications between parties, to automatically chase, to ensure the end users will always have the right IT and actually the options in how they want to sign, in terms of, do they prefer to do it on their mobile and sign with their finger, so on and so forth. And again, simplified solution or example here, but these digital cogs could also be plugged into a HR system, SharePoint, for example, to gain further automation and more consistency going forwards. Loads of benefits, and you know, a big one I always like to focus on is the user experience here. It's much quicker, save paper, so on and so forth, but happy end users all around. Moving on, and as we start looking at some of the sort of use cases in education, there are loads. Lots of these are not unique to education. I think you'll find most businesses would have huge amounts of benefits, particularly when we look at professional services. But some common ones we really see in education, HR, I've just given a sort of brief example of staff onboarding, and that is an area we see a lot of take up and a lot of interest, or a driving force, should I say, towards digital signature solutions. But HR may also want it for performance reviews, for offer letters, for enrolment, a changing contract to offer all staff Friday off every month going forwards. We'd all happily sign that one. Another common one we see really relates to IT and procurement. As I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of work with the education sector, and the amount of times we've had business critical software that needs to be purchased by our customer and are not able to raise a PO due to the sign-off process. And it could be somebody's not available, somebody hasn't signed something. And again, it's that lack of consistency, that lack of structure and governance really that prevents those from being expedited. And that causes stress for end users, pain for IT and procurement, and even for us, to be quite frank, at supplier level and manufacturer. We're doing our best to try and maintain pricing and be flexible where we can. And similarly, I mentioned framework agreements. We do a lot of frameworks. Lots of these have big lengthy contracts and multiple contracts at times. And again, the amount of times we see contracts where the signature box is in the wrong field, something's been missed off. And again, it's possible this will happen outside of digital signature solutions, but this allows you to rectify, amend, and move on far quicker than you can elsewhere. So great examples, but again, they're probably applicable to all businesses. That's certainly not unique challenges to education or the wider public sector. But I think a couple of areas we should also consider when we look at student services, particularly things like student onboarding, when we think about researchers, particularly in higher education, and the demands they bring and the paperwork both of these departments bring. You know, student services, you're onboarding maybe 7,000 students, 8,000 students potentially a year. Thinking about how can we automate those processes. For researchers, you know, they have to get funding, they need to get grants, they need to get IT, so on and so forth. If we're able to obtain funds faster for those users, what does that mean for us? Are we going to be able to attract more researchers? Are we going to bring in more funding into our institution? Are we going to deliver more effective research because of that? Are student services able to gain enough efficiency whereby they can reinvest their time and allow us to gain more students at enrollment period or during clearing, for example? They're the kind of points I think that I really want to provoke with you today. So again, great within your own area, but the wider organisation, I think there's some massive benefits. And again, bear this slide in mind, because when we look at all of these points, I honestly, hand on heart, feel one day in a not too distant future, it will be ridiculous and it will be a silly concept almost to be signing things on pen and paper. I think nearly all of these processes will be digitized. And to help sort of put value around that, there's a really interesting report that Adobe commissioned Forrester to deliver. And this is pulled data from that report as well as some statistics from the National Centre for Education Statistics. So again, apologies, it's an Americanized slide. I'll convert where possible. So this is looking at a school, but it'll be applicable to pretty much any education establishment. And they've established that for every 1,000 students, they feel that a school would need around or will process over 20,000 forms a year. So for every 1,000 students, you're processing around 20,000 forms a year. And the maths to it all was worked out here based on teacher and admin ratios and the amount of forms each of these users will have. So again, we've got calculators that can help you establish what this may look like for your own organisations. So great, 20,000 forms. We know the potential of what we can digitize. What's the benefits? There is an estimated cost saving of $6 or about £4.50 per form. And about 1.5 hours of labour saved per form. So if we were able to migrate all of your manual processes and digitise them based on 1,000 students, you'd be looking at saving about £90,000 a year and around 30,000 hours of labour. These are massive numbers. You know, these are absolutely, that's multiple numbers of staff. That's a huge saving and a huge ROI as well when we're talking about an investment perspective as well here. Now, I would say take this with a pinch of salt, because as the previous slide showed, there are so many areas we can digitize. I don't expect institutions to press a button and move to those immediately. But I think, again, just thinking about your area and the amount of forms and documents you may have and multiplying it with these numbers, there is absolutely, we found in pretty much every case, there is a cost saving to be had, including the cost of the license, and there are huge benefits, including labour. We'll touch on some of the other benefits in a moment as well. So to try and bring this to life and give you some real world examples, there's three educational case studies I wanted to briefly touch on, and then common denominators here. So again, you'll find that we're focusing on one particular benefit, which is in the headline orange numbers or orange data at the top. A lot of these have the same benefits. So a lot of these benefits are replicated throughout. And in addition, you'll find that in each one, there is a job specific benefit, if you like, as well. So I'll go through these all. That'll make more sense potentially in just a few moments time. So starting with Pace University, they are an American-based university, similarly sized to many of their counterparts in the UK. And they've used Adobe Sign to streamline a huge variety of internal and student-facing documents, such as sort of student grade changes, scheduling, student advisory, staff approvals. And our administrative teams are the ones that have probably seen the biggest changes around new course approvals. And this is a use case that we have seen crop up a few times in the UK, whereby you have new students or students re-enrolling for year 2, year 3, who have the option to pick modules, and trying to herd this group and to commit to something, let alone respond. The concept of herding cats certainly comes to mind. So the ability to automate and streamline that will have huge benefits around time saving, cost savings, end user experience. But again, the area we're really focused on for Pace is they've saved 100,000 pieces of paper a year. That is a huge amount of paper. And again, think about your organization's sustainability goals and how that could align to those as well. Moving on, we have Seneca College, who are a Canadian-based college. They're fairly large, actually, and they've got a big old footprint. They have 10 campuses, I think, all throughout Toronto, and they have a lot of staff coming and going. They have a lot of temporary staff, a lot of guest lecturers, etc. So they can have up to 12,000 forms a year just to cater for these staff coming and going. So they were taking around 5 days previously to complete these get the new staff forms signed, and they've got that down to under an hour. So I think 12,000 forms that were previously taking around 5 days, they are now saving over 95% of that time. What does that mean for that HR team? How are they able to reinvest that time? How much better is life working in the HR team at Seneca College right now? And again, lots of other benefits, so on and so forth, and I'll allude to more very shortly. And actually, sorry, one last one with those guys is I talk about the job-specific benefits. And this is in the case study. You can find us online. Seneca have come out and said, actually, the benefit of being able to sign these contracts faster, to deliver the paperwork quicker, has allowed us to focus enough where we are finding they're getting a higher level of talent. So they're able to reinvest that time that's around contract and administration, around talent acquisition, which means they have better staff, allow them to be more competitive, deliver better experience for the students, more employable students, better grades. That those job-specific benefits can be really, really significant. And again, in the final example, I think the job-specific benefits could be huge here, and potentially a value that we will make one up, but it could be kind of anything. So Iowa State University Foundation are a charitable body that are linked to Iowa State, and they simply obtain funds. And I say simply, probably quite flippantly, it is not an easy process to obtain funds, particularly in this manner where you're getting corporate sponsors, alumni, so on and so forth, to give money to the institution for them to reinvest in courses, so on and so forth. So it took a long time for them, up to a month at times, for them to be able to get these contracts signed and to get the funding in. And they've been able to reduce the time by 13 days. It takes them 13 days less to get money into their organization. So there'll be somebody in finance at Iowa State University that loves these guys because their cash flow would improve because of it, which is great. But again, if I'm saving 13 days of time chasing up paperwork, getting contracts signed, can I reinvest that time to try and get more funding? What's the value of that funding? It could be an extra £1,000, it could be another, or dollars, sorry, or an extra $1 million, who knows? So again, those job-specific benefits could be absolutely massive to the institution. Talk lots about benefits, worth summarizing these. And again, I've touched on most of these, but just to sort of summarize, we talk a lot about time and cost saving. And again, naively, I've probably bundled these together as if they're not massive points. Who does not want to save time? Who does not want to save money? These are things you can do by migrating to a digital signature. You'll gain significant efficiencies. And again, the ability to automatically save documents into a centralized cloud location can be massive in terms of compliance and auditability, and just reducing file cabinet size internally. What does this mean for our end user experience? That's huge, about being able to improve internal and external stakeholders' experience. What are those job-specific benefits? You know, that could result in money, that could result in more students, it could result in more research grants, all sorts of different things. And a really big point is around sustainability. You know, we talked about pace and 100,000 pieces of paper saved a year. I would dare to say that at least 4 of the points on here would be part of either and or your organization's overall strategy or within your team and your department. Pretty much everyone will probably be looking to reduce costs and save time. Everyone will be looking at sustainability, and the concept of improved end user experience in education is a real big topic and has been for some time. So moving on, right at the beginning, I showed you a slide around that Acrobat actually can provide digital signature functionality. So I just wanted to spend a couple of slides to show you the comparison between what you can do in Acrobat and what you can do in Adobe Sign as well. Now, just be aware when I'm talking Acrobat here, I'm talking Acrobat DC. This is the annual subscription model. If you have Acrobat Pro 2020, there are some variations. And if you're on any older version on a perpetual license than Acrobat 2020, then be aware they are going end of support. 2017 will be end of support in the next couple of months. And then over here, we have the 2 flavors of Sign. So we have a business version and an enterprise version. Generally, we see the enterprise version sells a lot more, and I'll touch on the features. But again, a big part of that, I feel, is there's very little in price difference between business and enterprise, and some of the promotions we'll touch on later are all around the enterprise piece as well. So often, actually, at times it can be cheaper to get enterprise. So a couple of quick points when we're talking about the ability to simply request an electronic signature, to be able to chase reminders and send notifications. We can do that in any of these, Acrobat DC, either of the Sign products. However, if we want to personalize these and provide branding, if we have users and groups to manage, if we want to maybe have self-serve web forms or take online payment, or have authentication to ensure the end user is correct, that is when we need to move to Acrobat Sign, you know, a full digital signature solution. And the final point on these sort of top features is pre-built integrations. So if you need this to work with third-party tools, so maybe bespoke HR systems, it may be the wider Microsoft estate, and again I'll touch on this in the next slide, but things like SharePoint, etc., then you will need the enterprise version. A couple other features just worth calling out, the ability to bulk sign. So if you need to send all of your staff a contract amendment, because you are going to give them Fridays off, you don't want to have to create a document and then keep going into it to change the name, to personalize it, send it off, particularly if you may have, you know, it could be 100 staff, it could be 15,000 is the reality. Either way, you have the ability to send personalized versions of the same contract, like a contract amendment, to multiple people in once with both versions of Sign. And a really cool feature is something called Workflow Designer, and this allows you to build complex workflows. So you may have a repetitive process that requires, you know, 3-4 individuals or 3-4 teams to potentially approve things and for the document to route through these guys in a logical order. You can drag and drop roles and responsibilities in. You don't need to be a developer or a coder to do this. It's really visual, and again, a really, really good way of gaining some significant efficiencies. Then moving on, we have a few more here. So I touched on integrations briefly, and again, Microsoft, some of the Microsoft ones work in all 3. So Word, Outlook, and PowerPoint integrates in all 3. So if you just have Acrobat now, you may notice when you launch Word that you have an Adobe Sign or an Acrobat Sign button in the top or in the banner. And again, they all integrate with things like Google Drive, other shared storage like Box and Dropbox. However, when we start looking at additional pre-built integrations like Salesforce, which is fairly common in the sector, Workday, ServiceNow, another really common one we see, then, or you want the additional Microsoft tools like SharePoint, Dynamics, Teams, which Matt will show you a quick demo of in just a couple of moments. Or you need APIs whereby, again, they're bespoke solutions, you would need the enterprise version. And again, if you want advanced security, you know, things like single sign-on, you have to have Sign. You cannot do that with Acrobat. And this again goes right back to the earlier slide around the comparison between digital signatures and electronic signatures. for full digital signatures for a certificate-based ID, you can only really do that in Sign or, well, in either of the Sign versions. There's a squiggle next to Acrobat, as there is some basic functionality, but probably not suffice for many needs. So in terms of the solutions, absolutely, well, solutions and promotions, we've talked a lot around Sign, and those last two slides really show you the sort of granular feature sets of the Sign products and Acrobat DC as well. There are some promotions to really help this as well within the education space. The first one here actually is less of a promotion as opposed to a new price point. So for schools and FE, you can buy Acrobat as part of the full Creative Cloud for under £5. Absolutely brilliantly priced. That's the full Creative Cloud. That is everything: Photoshop, InDesign, blah, 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 but you also get Acrobat DC. There are also a couple of promotions for higher education, and again, this applies for FE, where you can get 50% discount when you're migrating old perpetual versions, and a 20% discount for new Acrobat subscriptions when you're looking at 50+. On the Sign side of things, there are a few promotions here. So once you're looking at and again, these are all for the enterprise version, as I mentioned earlier. You can buy a pack of 3,000 transactions at under £1 each. You can get 1,500 transactions under £2 each. And again, I should probably advise what transaction is here. So a single document being sent would act as a transaction. It doesn't matter how many people are signing that document, but if it's a separate document, so again, back on that example of a contract for staff giving Fridays off, if I received the contract for David, that's one transaction. If Matt got one, exactly the same, but it's personalized to him, that's a second transaction. And then we can also give you 50 free enterprise transactions, just to have a little play around with. They last for up to a year. A great way of you being able to really have a more in-depth look and feel of the product as well. I'll hand over to Matt now, so I'll just quickly stop sharing, and I will hand over to Mr. Geary.
Thanks, David. Morning, everyone. I will just share my screen. So hopefully you can see that.
Yes.
Perfect. Right, as David mentioned, I'm going to be demonstrating two use cases for Adobe Sign this morning. The first being, I'm just going to send a document to a recipient. That document is going to automatically be sent to an approver, as David mentioned in an example about 20 minutes ago. We're going to see what that looks like for us to create the document, then what it looks like for the two end users, and then what that looks like for us as the sender, what that looks for us in our Manage tab. And then my second demonstration, I'm going to be showcasing an integration, and that integration is going to be with Microsoft Teams, and that's going to be showcasing an internal process. So I'll kick off things. I'm in Adobe Sign within Google Chrome, and I'm in the Send tab. So we'll input our first recipient's email address. Just type that in there, and then we'll type in our second recipient, the approver. Now, as we can see by these two icons here, they both have the same responsibility at the moment. This second person, we just want to approve the document. So we'll just change that there. Next, we'll add in our files, or our file that we want them to input their data and approve. So we'll attach that there, and then we'll press next. And that will take us to the form field data entry point. So this is essentially where we want to get the data from our recipients. And as we can see, if I just zoom out, we've got a new vendor application form. And as we can see, I've already inputted some form fields previously. I've done this by creating a new template, and I've saved that to my Adobe Sign portal. As we can see here, I've got three data entry points free here that I've left out. So I'm just going to showcase how we can drag and drop them form fields across. So as we see, we've got data entry points here, and I'll just drag across signature, a name, just tidy this up a bit, and then a date. And it is as simple as that. If I just remove you. Yeah, as simple as that, and we're ready to send that to our recipients. So we'll press send. As we can see, that has already been sent to our recipient. If we think about that manual paper process, we might have that document sitting on our desk where we might have to walk over to another campus to deliver that document, or we might have to give it to the Royal Mail or a distributor to send to another city in the country. If we just flick over to our first recipient's email address or inbox, we can see that document is already sitting in their inbox. If we press review and sign, nice big blue button, that will take us to the Adobe sign-in page. If we click the T's and C's, let's just zoom out again, we can see that these form fields that we've inputted are ready to be inputted by our data is ready to be inputted by our recipient. I won't do all of them, but we get the gist. Tick a few boxes here, and then we'll sign here. As we can see, we've got 4 different options to input our signature. We can type, as I've just done. We can draw a signature. Won't do that one though. We can upload an image of an actual wet signature, or we could send a mobile link to our mobile, and then we can get our mobiles and draw the signature, much like that one, but better version in my opinion. In this example, we'll just type it like that. It's already taken my name and it's already inputted the date. So that for that first recipient is ready to be clicked to be signed. As we can see, that's automatically been sent to our second recipient or the approver in this example. We flick over here, that's already there. Again, if we think about that manual paper process, same example, it might be sitting on our desk and we've got to go back over to the other campus to deliver that. Not with Adobe Sign, it's already sitting in our inbox. Again, big blue button takes us to this page. And as we can see in this example, we've got no yellow fields. That's because we don't want any data from this person. We just want them to look over the data, accept it and approve it. So if we just press start, and there we go, click to approve. And a name to approve it for compliance reasons. And as we can see, that form is already finished. If we flick back over to Adobe Sign and we go to manage, we'll just have a look at a couple of extra unique things that we can enhance that transaction send. If we go to completed, you can see that form is in our completed box. And there's just a couple of things that we can do just to enable a quick and easy process. So we can download that as a PDF and that can go directly into our OneDrive or Google Drive. We can download an audit report for compliance reasons. I'll just show you what that looks like. So we can see that the steps that have been taken by our sender and both of our recipients, and we can see some IP addresses. So the second demonstration is I'm going to showcase an internal process with an integration with Microsoft Teams. And in this example, we've got a weekly timesheet that I want my staff to input by Friday 4 p.m, let's say. And the current process at the moment is a third of my staff have an actual piece of paper and they wet ink signature and input their data. And they leave it on my desk, for example, every Thursday. The second third take a picture of that sheet of that data that they've inputted and send it to me via WhatsApp or via email. And the final third aren't in the office this day, so they have to manually input it via a Microsoft Word document and send it to me via email. All this does is that there's not a central location for this data, and with Microsoft Teams I can get a central location that they all can see where it is, and that data is collected. So what we'll do, we'll just copy this web form, we'll head into Microsoft Teams. And as we can see, my finance team, I just want to go up here, select website, sheet, and we'll copy and paste that link into here. As we can see, that has taken that web form and embedded it into Microsoft Teams. So that will now sit there forever until I tell it not to. And my staff members within this team can access it whenever they want and input their data. And what this does is it stores this data in a central location on my Adobe Sign portal. Now, for any web form, we have to authorize ourselves, and I'll just do that. And if we get up Adobe Sign and we go to Manage, we can now see that that timesheet has been completed by a recipient. And if we imagine back to our 20 staff members, if all 20 staff members do that, I've got 20 in one central location. So that was a demonstration of an integration with Microsoft Teams, and I'll hand back to David.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Matt. And I think just worth pointing out as well quickly is that Matt's not technical. Matt's learned all of these himself, and these are quite easy things to look at. Integrating it with Teams, you can do a couple of clicks of a button. You probably don't even require administration rights to achieve those. So it's just showing you the art of the possible, but there is far, far more to it as well. So thank you very much for the demonstration. Let me just click through and we'll have a quick summary, guys, and then I think we will be done for today's session. So we'll talk about the summary. So benefits, everything you would ever want from a benefit, a return on your investment, all the cost savings, time savings, efficiencies, sustainability, so on and so forth. We've talked about lots and lots of those, and I feel hand on heart, this is a type of product that will be utilized by everybody in the not too distant future. Again, there are multiple use cases in education. Some are unique to the education setting, others are for sort of applicable to any types of organizations. And again, there are additional job specific and education specific benefits of utilizing these solutions as well. There's loads of resource and support. So as a top tier Adobe partner, we in-house have lots of support able to help you around licensing, around the art of the possible with these, and really talking about your current manual processes. So get in touch, speak to us. We'll be more than happy to help out, but otherwise we hope you found this to be of benefit. Our details and some contacts are up on the screen now, and we look forward to hearing from you in the not too distant future. Thank you very much for your time. Take care.